So this Maamer is a very famous teaching of the Rebbe Marash, the Rebbe of Shmuel, and this is one of the Maamorim, which is really one of the foundational teachings of Chassidus, and it was elucidated by the Rebbe Marash, by this Rebbe. In fact, it's such a fundamental teaching that the Rebbe Marash considered it so holy that on occasions when he wanted to purify an area, purify the air, that's an expression. When he wanted to purify the atmosphere, he would repeat this Maamer and repeat this teaching in in different places, different times. It speaks fundamentally about the concept of monotheism. That is the idea of the one God, but then goes further and teaches even a deeper concept of not just that there is one God, because we have that expression already in the Shema Yisrael. That's what we say in Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. He is one.
Yes.
And there is a basic teaching about that he is one. But Chassidus goes a step further and teaches that there is nothing but Hashem. Now, the Rebbe Marash in this Maamer explains this in a deeper sense and over many study sessions. So we start off with the verse, Mi Chamocha Ba'elim Hashem, who is amongst you the gods of Hashem, Mi Chamocha Neder V'Kodesh,
yes,
who is like you, resplendent in holiness.
yeah. Yes, 1 second. Listen to.
And he then starts with the explanation. There is a famous translator, an Aramaic translator, and as you see in the note number 2, right, it speaks about the Targum and the Targum Yonasan, who was a time of the period of the great teachers, a disciple of Hillel. And in note number 2, it says the greatness of this translator, Targum Yonasan, and the Rebbe Marash is now quoting from him. So let's continue in the main text. Targum Yonasan, the translator or the translation of Targum Yonasan, he translates it as Man kavasicha be'ele meremem Hashem, who is like you amongst the supernal beings, Hashem. Now, this translation has an implication which we're going to discuss. V'hainu ki lefi hanira mishpat hapasuk. It seems from the verse and this translation that it leaves a possibility for an understanding that there exists some other spiritual entities of significance. Meaning to say, because he's because he's translated the words as who is like you amongst the Elim, and the Elim is really a literally it means the strong people, that it means spiritually strong. So the verse really reads, who is like you amongst the spiritual beings like you are God. So it seems that on a comparative sense, the verse is now comparing God to the supernal beings and saying that in measurable quantity, Hashem is the greatest. But in that same context, it gives credence, it gives a credibility to the other supernal beings, and that they're in a somewhat comparative to Hashem himself. And this idea is reinforced by the Targum Yonasan, because the Targum Yonasan translates it in that same sense. Because the Targum Yonasan translates it as to say that you are like him. So there is in order to forestall this thought that the other supernal beings are equatable to Hashem, so the verse says, or the verse reads as if it's like an exclamation mark. Who is like you? In other words, there isn't someone like you. That would be the Hebrew, right? So in the translation of Mi Chamocha Be'elim Hashem, you read it with an exclamation mark, like who is like you amongst the Elim Hashem? In other words, to say that they are not like you. And then the Targum Onkelos also translates it in that same sort of style by saying that there is nothing like Hashem. So let's just continue with the words in the text, because it appears possibly to read from the text without at least the Targum Yonasan's translation, that there is some level of godliness. So therefore, we'll start from the words "V'hainu ki lefi nira hamishpat haposuk," because it seems from the flow of the pasuk that it's possible to say that when we translated the words "Shemi Chamocha," who was like you, Yad Neder B'Kedesh V'Neder Sehiles, that there is, that you are the highest, Hashem, Aval Yesh Chas V'Sholom, but there is Misha Eina Neder. There's someone who's not so Neder B'Kedesh, who's not so awesome in praise, V'Neder Sehiles. So that is to say that if in the simple reading of the verse, there is spiritual beings, and God is number one on the measuring stick. So he then continues the explanation and says, "Lezer Tirgum," and that's why the Targum wants to translate it, "Man kavasicha be'elim marayim," that who is like you amongst the supernal beings, so that the verse conveys the same idea as the verse, that is to say that ein el mumvade, that there is none like you. And that's literally how another translator, Targum Onkelos, and another Aramaic translation that we have accepted by our sages, that he translates it, les va minoch, there is none like you. So therefore, this is the meaning of the verse, there is none like you.
Mm.
But even so, I mean, what does this mean? We can ask ourselves, what does this mean that les bar minoch? There is nothing besides you. I see clearly with my sense of vision that there is a table, that there is you on the other side of the computer. There are other things exist. So that's why he continues. And not only do I see that, but the Torah itself gives testimony that there exists other things. How do I know?
Mhm.
Because the first words of the Torah start off, L'chera eina muvan. So we continue with the text. L'chera eina muvan. Well, we can't. It's very difficult to understand the Targum Onkelos. There's nothing besides you, because it clearly says, the Torah says, how can it say that there is nothing besides you? Halach siv does it not say right the first words of the Torah, Bereshis bara, that God created. In the beginning, God created. So you cannot say, Targum Onkelos, that the concept means, you cannot say that the concept means that there is absolutely nothing else besides you. Because there does exist other things. The Torah itself testifies that Hashem created other entities. And as the text continues, Shenivra Harbor Dvarim, many things were created, B'Sheshes Yemei Bereshis, in the 6 days of creation. So in that case, if the Torah itself, it's not using my testimony, it's not using your testimony, it's not using testimony of the human beings. Human beings are limited, and they're limited in concept, limited in vision. However, I'm using testimony from the Torah itself. Torah is God's wisdom. So therefore God himself is saying that other things exist. He created them in the beginning. So how can you say that the concept of this verse means that there is nothing besides God if God created other entities? So this behoves us, or this requires us to understand what is the deeper meaning in this expression. So the Maamer now continues, and I have to sort of warn ourselves that the next couple of paragraphs is an analysis of various views from traditional sources exactly about this concept. What does it mean, Hashem is one? And as we progress in the Maamer, not necessarily in this session, but as we will progress, we will see a deeper meaning and a deeper understanding in the idea of the concept of Echad when we say Shema Yisrael, and the idea of Hashem's oneness. So let's continue. The text continues. We can understand this idea by first investigating Inyan Masha Kosov Ein Eid Milvado. So what does this mean, that this idea of Ein Eid Milvado, that there is nothing else besides him? And we can use an existing explanation of the Rambam of Maimonides when he explains a verse. So we'll utilize, we'll synergize, we'll investigate how the Rambam explains, and here's Magnus Opus, the Torah laws, and how he explains an idea. Continuing. So the Pirush Rambam Hilchos Yesod HaTorah. So in the Rambam, in the chapters which speak about foundational laws, concepts within the Torah, Perek Echad, chapter 1, paragraph 4, al apostle, and he explains the verse which says, "Hashem Elokim emet." Hashem Elokim is true. What's the idea of being true? So he quotes, "V'zeh l'shena, hu shahanobi Omar," that the prophet says that Hashem Elokim emes. When the prophet says that Hashem Elokim is true, the meaning of that is that hu lavadei, that he himself, or he alone, Hashem in his own existence, that is the definition ha'emes, that is the definition of truth. Meaning that the truth with a capital T, as I suppose you could say, true existence is Hashem. And we'll discuss it as we go on. But the true concept of existence is reflected of Hashem, but not necessarily his created beings. But let us use the text to do the talking. But other things are not emes, are not true, like his truth. That is to say, Hashem's existence is the true state of existence. Other existences, which might be true, are not like the truth of Hashem's existence. So therefore we continue, therefore when the Torah says, Ein Eid Malvado, there's nothing else besides him, Kalema, it means the following, that Ein Shom Motsui Ha'emes, there is no other existence or the finding of existence. There isn't such a state of existence of truth, Malvadei, except for Hashem. And it's only true Kameiso, that it's only a level of truth is the existence of Hashem. And that's the words of the Rambam, meaning to say, or Ad Kam L'Shona, that's the end of the quote from the Rambam. Therefore, the teaching is that the true state of existence is defined by God. His existence is what we call true, and only Hashem, with his full characteristics, exhibits the characteristics of truth in its truth in the ultimate sense. Now the teaching, our Maamer continues the discussion. So one aspect that the Rambam wants to exclude from his discussion is he wants to exclude the concept of shittul. Now let's use the text to help us with the understanding of this. And if we look at the text that you have in front of you, you look at note 9, and he explains, right, what is shittul, right? Now shittul is a concept, is a concept that's embedded in Torah. It describes other understandings of gods, but let's do the reading as we understand the note. So the note says, the belief that a given being has power, albeit one that is inferior to the supreme being, that's the idea of shittul. That is not idolatry per se. That is considering a being to be equal to God. Rather, shituf means to consider an entity to in some way be a partner to God. That is, to ascribe a power to another being besides God, even while accepting God as the supreme being. So we'll continue with the note in a minute, but let's just discuss what we've said. The idea that we've just said, that there is a concept in Jewish understanding and Jewish knowledge, that there is this idea of ascribing powers to other beings, spiritual powers to other beings, giving them some sort of level of credence, and that is called shituf. Shituf actually means to join, something like to be a partner. We can use it in a commercial sense, that people are partners together, so they are shituf together, they are joined, or they are partners together. So in a spiritual sense, this idea is that there is a shituf, a spiritual partner. Therefore, what the Rambam is saying in our quote that we said in the main text is that the Rambam is telling us that God's existence is not in any way a shituf. It's not a joint. It's not a joint work with other gods, as there are other religions which think along those lines. There is no equal partner to Hashem. So we will continue going along this line. The Rambam is excluding this concept of shituf, of composite godliness. Okay, so let's just finish this little note. So below, continuing in the Maamer, Rabbi Shmuel, the Rabbi Marash, will elaborate on this Jewish concept of shituf, and the verse in the Torah, which is the verse which tells us that God does not have shituf. So our belief, the Jewish belief of monotheism, is that there isn't shituf in the world. That does not mean that there aren't spiritual beings in the world, because God created angels, but they are not the partners, and they are not the equal partners. So our belief of Hashem Echad, that Hashem is truth, his truth of existence is he is the one that exists, and there's nothing else that exists besides him. That doesn't necessarily preclude other existences, as the Maamer will elaborate. But as we said at the beginning, that and as the quote from the Rambam was in the text, that Hashem is alone, that he alone is true, and no other beings possesses truth like his truth. That is, his existence is not like any other existence that exists. Okay. Now, the text will continue exploring other Jewish philosophers and their opinions, or other halachic, other codists, and their opinion in relationship to these ideas. Okay, so back to our main text. Bahainu. So we said before that the purpose of the Rambam's word is kavana le'etzia in your shituf, to exclude, to negate the concept of shituf. Okay, so now the Ramah, in his opinion, so the Ramah was a author of primarily known for his work in halacha, was a preeminent halachic authority in the Ashkenaz world, and he wrote a gloss also in the Shulchan Aruch of Rabbi Yosef Cairo. Okay, so he writes, the Ramah writes that in Erechayim Seif Siman Kufnum Vav Kosav, he writes that, and he refers to not exactly what we're saying at the moment, but we'll infer from these words the understanding of the Ramah. He writes, Shebanei Noach, that the children of Noah, meaning all people who are alive today, all human beings, Shebanei, and refer, meaning to say that all human life. How do we understand how does the Jewish religion understand that what they're required to understand, that what should be their understandings of godliness? That, and he continues, Shabbanei Noach, that the non-Jewish world, ein muzorim al shitu. They're not told that they should not believe in gods. They shouldn't. They're not required not to believe in the concept of shitu. That is to say that they are allowed. They don't have to reject the concept of shitu. Okay, and further, V'hu ma'atesvus perakama de b'cheres daf beis sof amud aleph, and he infers this idea from a commentary on the Talmud called the Tosfos, Dibra Maskol Shami Yischayef Loila Akum, that he understands from the quote that he wrote in that address that we just said in that page on that in that phrase, but and he says that they are not required to reject it. And in also the Sanhedrin in another tractate in Gemara in the Talmud, and he writes the place where to find it, the Sanhedrin Perek Zayin Daf Samach Gimel Amud Beis Dibra Maskal Osel Adam. And further, there's another authority, Maharam Sefer Kama de Akum. And another authority, Rabbeinu Rucham Nisiv Yud Zayin Chelik Hey. Okay. So those are the authorities which describe that a non-Jew is not forbidden to believe in Shitu, as we explained, that there is other spiritual entities and within the world. Moving further, however, it's not just dry cut like that. There are other opinions, and he brings those other opinions, right? Aval b'tshuvas v'shova kayin siman lamaches tshuvas shar Ephraim siman chop daled nechol ta'olav. There are other opinions who don't maintain that way. And other Jewish authorities, which we just listed, that they say that even a non-Jew is obligated in not believing in a composite or in a composite belief in God. That is the idea of Shitu. Okay, moving further. Now we say, he continues, V'hainu, and we can address this a little bit more detail further on, and let's just say a couple of more lines from the text. V'hainu, ki inyan ashitu ein aveda zara klal. The idea that idolatry, as defined in halacha, what is idolatry? We are not, non-Jews have got definitions in relationship to idolatry. We have a definition of what is idolatry, which we'll come to. But what these sages are saying is that the idea of shittul is not like idolatry, and because it's not like idolatry, therefore they are allowed to believe in shittul. Okay. So at our next session, we will continue these ideas. So therefore, we'll expand a little bit on what we said. The text quotes from a commentary of Medrash Rabbi and discusses the idea of angels. The angels are spiritual beings. An angel is a spiritual being. We read and we're told commentary about angels in the Torah, in our oral law. So an angel is a spiritual entity. So how does that differ from other spiritual entities? How can we understand them? So we're going to quote this comment, Medrash Rabbi, and try to infer something from that to make us a step further in our understanding of the ideas of Shituf and monotheism. Okay, the quote. Rabbi Yochanan Omar, Rabbi Yochanan has taught that in the days of creation, in the 6 days of creation, Omar Rabbi Yochanan, Omar Shenivra B'Sheni, that angels were created on the 2nd day of creation. The Rab Chanina, another sage, Omar Shenivra B'Chamishi, that they were created only on the 5th day. Because the 5th day says, V'eif Ya'efef, and the fowl that fly, and the cryptic comments of Rabbi Chanina say, what does V'eif mean? Eif doesn't mean a chicken or a bird, or it might mean that in its most simplest sense, but in a more subtle sense, it refers to angels, and therefore says, V'eif said, this bird that's mentioned in the verse, that refers to the angel Michael. And when we say the second word of the verse, Yefef, Zer Gabriel, that refers to the other angel called Gabriel. And Omar Rebbe Lulina ben Tavron, and the other sage said, a later stage said, that when Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Yochanan mentioned what they said, they actually meant to say, or their meaning was, that Bein al Daita Rabbi Chanina or Bein al Daita Rabbi Yochanan, whether we adopt what Rabbi Chanina said or whether we adopt what Rabbi Yochanan said, Hakol Meidin, everybody agrees, meaning both opinions agree, Shaloi Nivra Berishon Klum, that no angels were created on the first day, Shalei Yom Rasha, so that people wouldn't misunderstand and say, Shemichol Mosach Bedreima, Gabriel Betzveino, V'Kodesh Baruch Hu Mamida Be'emso, that there was an angel in this direction, an angel in the other direction, a Michal on the south, Gabriel on the north, and Hashem was in the middle. Because if I do that, then it seems that they're all like one. And therefore, another verse says, and this is the intent of a verse when it says, Anechi Hashem, Esa Kol Mish Iti. Hashem says, I am God. Anechi Hashem, full stop. I am the Lord. I am the supernal being called the godly name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. And Esa Kol Mi Iti, and I created everything that was there. Mi hoya shutaf. Is there someone who was with me? For my separations, there was no, who was with me at the time of creation of creation? That is to say, that's an implication that even the supernal entities of Michal and Gabriel, those angels, the highest of angels, they are spiritual entities. Nevertheless, they are not part of creation. So we'll just say these next lines. Nishma mezeh she'inyan hakituv yitochen gam olam malachim. This idea that there can be some sort of partnership, a shittul, with God, that also refers to gam olam malachim, Michal and Gabriel. It also refers to the angels Michal and Gabriel, shehem nivraim, that they themselves are creations, spiritual, but they're creations. Be'im hoya nivraim berishon, and if they were created on the first day, that they could say that they were partnerships, shutuf, that they were some sort of partner, chas v'sholom b'may separations in the creation.
Okay. I have to go, Rabbi, sorry.
So therefore, so therefore we say that they cannot be, that they weren't created on the first, on the second, on the fifth day.
Okay.
To preclude any understanding that they were shutfum, that they were partners. What is
partners in the creation, right?
That shituf is not allowed. Is not a acceptable understanding of how God created the world.
Okay.